What's up, everybody? Welcome to the MSP Water Cooler. My name is Jonathan Schofield. My friends call me Scofie. I am your host today, and I am joined by co-host Jeffrey Newton. And we have a special guest on deck, Steve Young, and we will give him a moment to introduce himself shortly. But if this is your first MSP Water Cooler, let me just prepare you for what you maybe have stumbled into scrolling LinkedIn or YouTube, or you saw some crazy AI graphic of these three fine gentlemen and you're like, what the heck is this? And you decided to roll the dice and show up, and here you are. First of all, if you are here, so glad you are. Say hi in the comments. Let us know you're watching, and be prepared because today's a little bit different. MSP Water Cooler is not about us having some great content to come share with you and bless you with. It's really meant to meet you where you're at in sales, business development, and growth, and take your questions, challenges, obstacles, and as professionals in the trenches, shoulder to shoulder with you, we want to discuss them. So who is this for? If you're an IT services business owner, an MSP revenue leader, you do sales, business development, marketing, growth, you're responsible for that next dollar that your IT business is supposed to bring in, then this is your place. And everybody on this call wants to see you crush it and get better. And we're here to help in the ways that we can. So how do you interact with the people on this call? Number one, we want to hear from you what you're dealing with in sales, business development, growth, marketing, whatever it is. So drop a comment on LinkedIn. You could drop it on YouTube if you're watching there, but it'd be better if it's on LinkedIn. And bonus points, if you're brave, to join us on screen and ask your question live. I promise that we won't make you feel stupid, because we want this to be meaningful for everyone. If you're dealing with something, I promise you a peer of yours is also. So come on screen, turn your webcam on, turn your microphone on, and ask us your question. We'll give you about a minute and a half to ask your question or present the scenario or challenge that you're dealing with, and then we'll get you off. And the three of us will discuss and explore and share what insight we would have into your situation. Maybe you've got something that's stumping you, and we would love a challenge. I promise you, everyone on this call wants a challenge. So if you think, oh, these guys don't have the answer, try us. And maybe we don't. But we would love to be put under the gun today and have some fun with that. So you all know Jeffrey, you all know me. Steve, so grateful to have you here with us today. Say hi and let us know a little bit briefly about who you are, where you come from, and what you're looking forward to in today's stream.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me on. I am the co-founder and head trainer at Nexus Sales Group. Primarily what we do is it's an education platform. We're trainers, so we want to get people up to the current standard of sales and excel far past it. And then we've got some services sprinkled in between to help people fill in those gaps where they don't want to do it themselves. But my focus and where I came from, I've always worked in the MSP sales space. I came from one of those situations where inbound just wasn't really a thing. The referral well came dry, and I had to become somebody who maximized on everything that came my way. So cold outbound, making strangers like, trust, and move forward with me quickly is what my specialty is.
I love it. Now, in the virtual studio before we went live, I was getting to know you a little bit, and we ran down a rabbit trail about health and wellness and fitness a little bit, and it turns out that's an area of your life you're incredibly passionate about. And ironically, I one of the questions I asked through LinkedIn. So if you registered for this event, you probably got a DM from me asking you, A, sweet or salty, B, if you had a question for the three of us, what would it be? So we had a few people respond to that, and some people said sweet, some people said salty. So Steve, I'd like you to tell us sweet or salty and why, and maybe share a little bit about why you're passionate about health and wellness. I think there's a lot of parallels between that and sales fitness. So that was a really fun thing to learn about you. So
Yeah.
sweet or salty, Steve?
Sweet, man. Sweet all the way. I had some would say too big of a sweet tooth, which is what eventually got me around to sales. But for me, what was such a big part of fitness that translates into sales for me was just I really didn't have that discipline muscle. I just did things, and it led to me looking down at the scale, and the weight was much higher than what I wanted it to be. So I'm one of those extreme personalities where I get into something, I get into it, and I need to see it through, and I need to read everything or consume everything. And so woke up on a Monday morning, did this fitness challenge thing where basically for 3 months you're in isolation, work out twice a day. You don't skip a meal, you don't cheat, you don't do anything. It's just focus. And 5, 6 years later, it's now just a staple. It's something I have to do. I absolutely love it. And if you ask anybody in my life, including my girlfriend, it's I have to do it or I become a very irritable person. But very long way of saying sweet, man. I want something sweet every single night of the week, which is why I work out so hard.
All right, so now I have to ask, like, so you could snap your fingers and the perfect sweet dessert, treat, candy, whatever it might be. I mean, what's your go-to?
I don't know if this is national, but if you guys are familiar or anybody in chat's familiar with Brigham's ice cream, chocolate chip ice cream, it is a game changer. It's the most delicious thing in the world. Those, or if you give me some nerd clusters, like the little, oh,
Yeah.
amazing sweet tarts. I mean, I could sit here and talk your ear off about sweet treats. So those are Brigham's ice cream, though. That's number one, man. Got that from my mom.
So specifically Brigham's chocolate chip ice cream. I don't know that I've had Brigham's specifically before.
Yeah.
I am a cookies and cream guy. In fact,
Yeah.
like I actually my answer is salty, but I do love sweet as well.
Yeah.
So if I was to choose a sweet thing, my favorite thing is like a peanut butter Oreo cookies and cream milkshake.
Yes. Yes.
All of the gods. Anyways,
real quick to Tyler Leach in the chat. Yes, 75 hard is the exact challenge that I did. So good catch.
Nice. All right, good stuff. Good stuff. Jeffrey, I have to ask you now, sweet or salty, before we begin questions.
Yeah, I hate binary questions, and I very rarely answer them that way, right? So my first response is gummies. Yeah. Anything gummy, right? So gummy's going to naturally probably put me more towards the sweet category than the salty category, but gummies are my vice.
Yeah, so Jeffrey does hate the binary questions. If you joined us on our last episode, the question was Jedi or Sith, and you definitely rejected that as well, which I appreciated.
Yeah.
You're more of a Han Solo.
That's right.
Which I respect it. I respect it. All right. Yeah. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we got some folks watching on LinkedIn, and we see you in the chat. We appreciate that you're here. We're going to begin. Now, we've got some folks who've responded to my LinkedIn DMs, so I've got some questions I can pull up on the screen. We'll take them one at a time, but priority will be given to those who hop backstage. So if you're in the comments on LinkedIn, you should see that StreamYard link. If you don't see it, let me know. I'll drop it back in the comments again, but you can join us backstage. So while we're wrestling with this first one, if you join, turn your webcam on, make sure your mic is working. We'll see you backstage. We'll ping you and bring you on when it's time for the next question. So we would love to have you join us today. Without further ado, we did not get to all of our questions from last live. So I'm going to, let's see here, add to stage. Here we go. So Rob, and I see you there in the chat. We're glad that you're here with us, Rob. This was a question that you had asked like 2 weeks ago, and we didn't get to answer your question. And then additionally, so you were Jedi. That's why you see this here. So we didn't get to see that you're Jedi. So I wanted the world to know that you were here 2 weeks ago when you asked this question. We didn't get to your question, and your answer was Jedi. And then you also answered for this week, sweet. So yeah, that tracks. Me being Sith and salty, you being Jedi and sweet. So we are complementary opposites, I guess. Here's the question from Rob. As someone new to the MSP space, I don't have a question as much as being patient in the sales process. So if I'm reading between the lines here, you're making an observation that patience is key in the sales process. If you want to add some color to that, feel free to join us on screen, Rob, and we can kind of run that down. But let me kick this off here. Steve, talk to me about the balance in the sales process and what role patience plays. Actually, our boy Rob did just join backstage, so let's pull him on. Before you respond to that, Rob, hello. Wait, no, never mind. Rob you're not Rob. Here you are, Mr. Lowell Rhodes. How are you? Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm good.
All right, I need to clarify something. Normally, we have our producer, Sam Disraeli, and he handles the bringing of guests on screen while we tackle these questions. And he was kind enough to hop on. He's actually watching right now, but he's driving, so he's not able to do the producer stuff that we would normally have. So I'm doing too many things at once. So I read Rob's question, and I got all excited when I saw you join, Lowell.
Yes, here I am.
Here you are. Because you're here and because you're on screen,
doing great.
we're going to give you the opportunity to ask your question first. And Rob, I swear we're coming to you next. I swear it. All right, Lowell, what's your question for the crew here?
So I've been in MSP sales for about 15 years. And one of the biggest things that I hear all the time, probably due to complacency and ignorance on the part of the buyer, is everything's great, everything's fine. We've been working with Bob or so-and-so XYZ company for a while and everything's great. They might be getting ready to fall off the edge of a cliff, but their stock response is everything is great. How do you dig into that, and how do you dig into that and fight through it?
That is such an amazing question, Lowell, and I'm so glad you asked it. I'm going to hold off my thoughts because I'm going to kick you out of the studio now so that the gentleman here can wrestle with it. But I am so grateful that you're here, that you asked this question. Tune in on LinkedIn and watch as we wrestle with this. All right.
Great.
So
Thank you.
Appreciate you, Lowell. Steve,
Yeah.
we're all set, right? Everything's great. Everything's fine. The classic objection. What are your thoughts on Lowell's question here?
Yeah, I mean that is a great question. It's the biggest thing we battle up against in the MSP sales space constantly is it's good enough until you show them that it isn't. And the way that I've always navigated those types of conversations is to ask questions that expose gaps. So it's not, you can never tell somebody, hey, you have a really big problem and you need to fix it, because immediately it spikes sales pressure. They close off and they go, "No, I don't have a problem." And people just get defensive. But if you start asking questions, and these can be very basic. So remember, you need to meet the prospect where they're at. So they would be classified as issue unaware, and obviously they're solution unaware because they have no idea that they have issues. So I like to ask them very pointed, very straightforward questions to get them to start thinking. And you want to ask these very straightforward, very clear, very concisely, and let silence speak for itself, because silence is where people connect the dots. An example of a question like that, not just to give you the political workaround here, would be something like, let's take something along the lines of backup. Let's say that's what we're talking about, and we're just asking questions about their environment. I could ask, how are you certain that your backups are being done nightly, weekly, or whatever cadence they agreed to? How do you know that those are being done? That's it. And you ask a string of those in each different area. It can relate to cybersecurity, it can relate to backup, it could relate to really anything. But you just want to ask these straightforward questions to get them to go, oh, I don't know if that's being done. That's really all you can do. Now, ideally, if you get ahead of this, what you want to do is nurture somebody through the levels of awareness pre them getting to you. Now, that's not always doable in cold outreach, but that's where marketing would come into play. And you can send either emails, campaigns, or things like that to get people to see. Now, those are typically more observational than they are, hey, here are problems, but it's, hey, here's what we've been seeing. And then you can build off of that from there. But I would say asking very direct, concise, and clear questions to give them a state gap between the thing that they want and the thing that you have. Another example of that, and Jeff, I'm going to let you jump in here too, because this is what you do. But one of the things that I really like to do is ask questions that show a little bit of contrast between what they should be doing and the ideal state and what you're doing now. And so if I were to say, hey, when you have something come up cybersecurity related, are you reaching out to your MSP, or are they letting you know ahead of you even knowing? And then just quiet, just sit. Let them say, well, we bring it to them. Okay. And that's really common. And then ask another question. Now they're thinking in their head, like, well, shoot, should my MSP be bringing that to me, or should I be bringing it to them? There's a state gap. And so contrast questions are really good. But the way that I just asked it, very direct to the point, not justifying your question, like, hey, are you bringing your stuff to the MSP, or are they getting ahead of it and bringing it to you? And the reason I asked that is because none of that. It's just direct, look at them, let them answer. Silence is key here. That's where people are connecting the dots, and you need to let the prospect connect the dots and then move them forward.
I love that insight, Steve. Thank you so much. Jeffrey, take a crack at this for Lowell.
Yeah, I was going to make sure that we emphasized what Stephen was saying specifically about contrast and space. Space being the silence. The most powerful thing you can do in sales is learn to count to 7 quietly and silently in your own head. And when you deliver a question, just like Stephen said, you start counting and you endure the discomfort when you're sitting across from another human being, creating that silence, because it is almost counterculture to what we do, right? Like, you've almost asked an antagonist or protagonistic question, and then you're silent without justification. But connecting the dots is the most important piece. And Stephen mentioned all the reasons why. I don't need to go down that hole. So the little nugget I was going to give is like, learn to count to 7. 7 is the most powerful tool that you can use because of all these other psychological things that are going to go on. Questions are great. The other element that I usually teach on, or that I ran, was Stephen mentioned the word contrast, which is key. It's really about protecting either the ego or the identity of the individual you're talking to. And when you really think about someone who's looking to change, especially IT solutions, there's so much wrapped up in that decision that either is tied to ego or identity. And we could break that down into, like, I made the decision with the current partner. I don't want to lose my job if that partner fucks up. Like, there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in it for that particular individual. And you have to take a step back long enough to realize that it's actually about a lot more of those things, those risks for that individual you're talking to, than you just wanting to make that sale. And if you can make that dynamic flip on, like, which side of the table you're talking from, that's incredibly helpful too. How you can start to do that, how I always did that, was I would control what I could control, which is either time or space. And time might be something with a direct question of, when I'm, let's say it's a cold first meeting, first time appointment. It's the why me, why now question of, like, why am I the one sitting in this room? How did we get to this conversation? And then the why now part, which is the more important part. And if you can't get the pinned down answer on the why now, then you just reframe it to, well, why not 6 months ago? I usually go to the past before I go to the future, because going to the future makes it feel like I'm setting them up as a salesperson. So, like, well, why didn't we talk about this 6 months ago? You get a lot of context in that answer. And then you ask the reframe of, like, well, why not 6 months from now? And between those two bookends, if you're willing to count to 14, then you're going to have pretty much everything you need to navigate everything for that sales close.
I love this. So you both said it, creating space, right? And letting them open up. And I think that's absolutely key. I'm gonna provide not a contradictory perspective at all, but I think if my intuition is telling me, Lowell, where this question is coming from, I think it's really important to understand at what point in the sales process this specific objection is coming to light. If you are at a networking event and you are shaking a person's hand for the first time, and then they're asking, well, Lowell, Mr. Rhodes, what do you do? Oh, I do IT. Should we be talking? My company handles IT for small businesses or law firms or whatever, just like you guys. Should we be talking? And they say, just like you said here, quote, everything is fine. We've been working with Bob for years. Okay. Now, I would call that, at that stage in the sales process, not an objection at all. That's a non-objection. They've told you nothing other than that everything is fine and they've been working with Bob for years. And if this is a cold call, right? Same thing. We're all set. No, thanks. We've got that covered, right? They haven't actually objected to anything other than really just the conversation at this point. So step number one, if that's the point in the sales process where you're running into this, it's like the very first couple of touches where this is rearing its ugly head. Most likely, this is just a tactic to end the conversation with you as quickly as possible. And they've literally told you nothing. And Steve, you brought this up as well. It's like, well, you need to kind of let them open. You need to create space to let them open up and use like something specific that forces them to kind of peel back some layers of the onion. And what I call it like looking for the bruise, right? You're looking for the bruise where you can just gently push on it and be like, doesn't it suck that X, or isn't it unfortunate that Y? And you gently push on that bruise. Wouldn't it be nice if? And you paint the picture of a future state. The other thing I was going to say related to this question, Lowell, the biggest incumbent or competitor in a sales process is not the other MSP down the road. It is, in fact, the status quo of just accepting that pebble in their shoe or that bruise for what it is and not doing anything with it. Just dealing with the status quo and moving on. You are the devil they know, and their view might be better to work with than taking a risk on ripping it all apart and having Lowell's team put it all back together. That's a very painful process. You don't sell pizzas or shoes or a SaaS product I can add to cart and check out. It's a big deal. Like you said, Jeffrey, there's ego and identity wrapped up in this decision in a really intimate way. And if you're a stranger approaching me and you're my ego and identity, I think there's any level of risk involved with this conversation, I want to shut it down as quickly as I can. It's an uncomfortable discussion. I want to get out of here. So if this is coming up later on in the sales process, right? You've already had many meetings with this law firm. You've had many meetings with these people. And they're like, you know what? We've been working with Bob for years. I changed my mind. Everything's actually fine. Well, they're lying to you. There is something that derailed. You're like, where did I lose you? What's going on? And you got to put your Sherlock Holmes hat on at that point and really dig in. But I'm suspecting that where you're most often running into this, and feel free to comment, Lowell, if I'm right or not. This is probably at the highest level in the sales process, where you're first meeting the prospect for the first time, and they're like, no, thanks, we're all set. That's my suspicion. Tell me if I'm wrong or not. We spent too much time on this, Lowell. Great question. Thank you for your bravery and joining us on screen. And now, Rob, actual Rob, you're next in the queue. Before we transition into our next question here, just to remind our viewers, if you have something burning in your brain and you want to get it out and you want us to wrestle with it, we've got a queue of questions, but priority is given to those who jump on screen. So use that StreamYard link and hop in backstage. But let's go ahead and pull. And I also must admit that Lowell, you said you were salty. You were salty. You told me that in the LinkedIn DMs. So everybody needs to know that. All right. Back to you, Rob. Jedi, sweet. Being patient in the sales process. And then I know you added a clarification here in the chat. To clarify, you've been in the low voltage space for 19 years and you did really well. And now you're realizing that you're in the MSP space. It's very, very different 4 months in. Okay. So Steve, let's all right, I'm doing too many things on the back end here. Why do you believe Rob is having that experience? Why is it so different coming from low voltage to MSP? And what role does patience play in the MSP sales professionals world?
Yeah, it's really, I don't want to say everything, but it's a huge part of it, because sales in general is a constant scale of, it almost feels like paradox, because it's pushing and pulling. And sometimes pushing is what makes people pull you in closer, or it's a separation of ego and humility. Like, I'm going to go after everything, or I'm going to take some time and look at, okay, I probably shouldn't actually go after this thing. There's a lot of different scales you need to keep in mind. But patience, when to go for the kill and when to take your foot off the gas, is extremely important, because there's nothing worse than mismatching your message to the buyer when they're not where you need them to be to hear the thing. And so if you don't have the patience to get them there, whether it's, again, through a nurture sequence, whether it's through multiple meetings, just to get them to that point where they're ready to really hear the pitch, so to speak, you need to give enough space and time for them to come to some of these conclusions so you can deliver. And so what you're probably feeling is that, man, I've only been in this thing. I think if I read that right, you've only been in for 4 months. The sales cycle, the average sales cycle here is 90 days, and that can be give or take. And I've had deals that went, I'm sure all of us here, 9 months, 12 months. I've had deals that went 3 weeks. It could go in either direction, but patience is just knowing that as long as you take the time to understand a prospect and you nurture them through the buying process and you don't just try to force them into your sales process, ultimately what's going to happen is sales pressure is going to be lower. People are going to want to work with you more and talk with you more. And then it's a more enjoyable process for everyone. So you're not pitching, talking to people, and they just kind of lean back in the chair and start giving you the, yep, everything's good. Yeah, we're fine. Usually when you get those, something was done to evoke those types of responses, and they just don't want to share with you yet. So patience is key, and something that I had to work on a lot. I had to work on that one a lot because I was that person who was like, I just want to close everything and everyone. But you got to take the foot off the gas, and you got to let them get to the right point where the message will actually be heard.
I appreciate that perspective. I really, really do. Getting them to that point. I have so many thoughts. I'm going to hold on to them for a second. I want to hear what you're thinking, Jeffrey.
Yeah, the two immediate things that came to my mind was that really specific to your point about you came from low voltage and now you're in MSP. So like I want to label that really quick because there's another label that kind of goes along with it. The low voltage world would have been a much more let's call it transactional sale versus what selling MSP is, which is really kind of that black magic. It's anything to anyone, and it's the obligation and the responsibility to communicate it. That's usually the part that's the struggle. The second part to that then is, as I always call it, is selling MSP services is an event-driven sales cycle. Now, our task then as the sales rep becomes we either wait out for the event to actually occur, and now the event is usually one of 5 things. It's their favorite guy left, the company got bought, they had an incident of security, they may have had infrastructure failure, or the 5th one that I can never remember because it always rotates, but like there's 5 things. So you either have to like allow them to sit in good enough, long enough for one of those 5 things to happen, and then they call you back, or you have to psychologically create that same event in their mind that allows them to get over the emotional attachment to what they think is scary, which is the change. And there's a lot of other stuff that goes into that. But the 2 main things there was MSP sales, I think oftentimes is just mislabeled as not really being thought through or thought of as a complex sale because it's also intangible, right? Low voltage, for example, it's a product and a service, but there's a clear outcome, a clear thing you got from it. 43 drops in this net new building versus managed services, which has a lot longer tail oftentimes too, to get to the outcome that they're actually buying or that they're actually wanting. It's going to be the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year outcome for their company. And so it just has such a different runway to it. And even to Steven's timeline, I would say 90 days is the average, what you should expect. I pretty much ran 2 pipelines. One was 90 day from 0 to 90 days, and then 91 days to 18 months is how I managed all of my cycle.
Yeah. I this whole time I've been Brian Gillette, the gentleman who was our special guest 2 weeks ago. He made this comment at the last water cooler session that I think is really relevant to you, Rob. He said, sales is sorting. Okay. So MSAs for managed IT are sold and signed every day. Every day, a buyer buys services from an MSP, and probably lots of these sales are happening. And then you're like, well, where are mine? Why is it taking me so long? Well, like my suspicion here for you, Rob, is a common problem I see with MSP sales is sales professionals selling to folks who are not in fact buyers. Right? So you need to make sure you have a laser focus on who your buyer is and what are the indications of a buyer, right? So that when you're on a discovery call or you're taking a prospect out to coffee or you know, you're getting that introduction from a peer or a colleague or whatnot, you can know and quickly sort, is this a prospect? Is this a lead? Is it an opportunity? Opportunity meaning that there's actually some buying signals that would indicate that, to Jeffrey's point, there's some type of event component that's driving them. Just because you work with law firms and you met a lawyer at a local networking event does not necessarily mean that's a buyer. Prospects, sure, they meet your ideal customer profile, perhaps, and they're like a dream client. You'd love to work with them. But just because they meet the criteria and just because they met with you does not necessarily mean you're talking to a buyer, right? So the sorting effort of like, who in fact is my buyer, right? And when the sorting exercise and building your pipeline, that's where you spend a lot of your time and effort. But in my experience, a lot of MSP sales professionals that I talk to, they just, you know, shoot with a shotgun with like a super wide spread and be like, these are all of my buyers. In fact, they're not necessarily my buyers. So a buyer you can take through a sales process. A prospect you can qualify, but if he or she doesn't give you those buying signals, it is very easy to burn a tremendous amount of time and effort forcing a sale that was never going to happen. Okay. Now that does not mean, and Steve, you brought this up. You talked about nurturing your prospects. You talked about cultivating future pipeline. This is where the work of sales and top of funnel business development is so key. You got to understand the who. You got to understand the conditions in which that who becomes a buyer. And then you got to know what levers you can and cannot pull at those various stages in the sales process that are going to most likely like keep them connected to you. So when that inciting moment of like, oh man, I need help, and yours is the number that rings, yours is the phone that rings. And it's because you've done the work of business development at the highest part of the funnel to earn the awareness, to earn the presence in their mental real estate, as I like to call it. And now you have a buyer on your hands. But the biggest mistake I see a lot of MSP sales professionals is that they're selling to non-buyers. And that is going to be frustrating because it takes forever to sell to someone who was never going to give you money anyways. All right, I'm done preaching. Hopefully that was helpful. Any last thoughts for Rob before we transition?
No, I think that nailed it.
All right. Now, I do see some questions in the chat, and I want to get to them, but we do have some folks who responded to my DM still, and I want to make sure that we get to everybody if we can. How are we doing for time? All right. So we got a solid 15 left. We can keep rolling. This one's dense. Nathan Carter asked this, and there's a lot here. And this is another rollover from the last water cooler. So we don't know, Nathan Carter, if you're watching this with us, or if you are watching the recording back later, let us know in the comments, sweet or salty. But now we know Sith. And I'd like to call out, Nathan, that I also chose Sith. And you are the only person who responded to these questions who didn't say Jedi so far, if memory serves. So welcome to the dark side, brother. But Nathan Carter, there's a lot here on the screen. I'm going to read it quick. And we'll condense it, and then we'll take a crack at it. Struggles with an upfront contract conversation. I used it well in the past, at least I thought I did. Now that I work for an MSP, having this conversation with commercial clients is difficult, and I lean on my NDA for most of the heavy lifting. Here's the real question. How do you say, if I do this for you, then I need you to do this for me? I feel like we're doing a bunch of pre-engineering work and then getting ghosted while they shop our findings. All right. So hands up if you've been in this scenario where you did just a crap load of work for a prospect only for them to disappear, and you felt like all of the levers that you could pull were taken away from you. I know I've had that experience.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
All right. Steve, what's your perspective on this for Nathan Carter?
Yeah, this is where a concept that I don't think many people train on at all, or maybe they train it, but they just don't label it. It's framing. So there's always a frame in a conversation. Somebody is saying, and I know that if you mean like an upfront contract is in like the Sandler, like, hey, if I do this, you do that kind of a thing, then usually that falls flat because say somebody goes, hey, go do this, figure this stuff out and give me information, and you just comply and go do it. And you say, okay, well, then that means you're going to do this for me, right? It's really, it almost commoditizes you and turns you into a vendor, someone who just does things that they ask to do. You see it really commonly in a few different areas, but with upfront contracts in general and in sales in general, you want to give information, clarity, direction, but you don't want to give resources until they're ready to actually be somebody who's going to work with you. So sometimes people will push you as far as you're willing to go, and they'll take as much as you're willing to give. And the trap that I fell into early on was just that. So I can speak very clearly to this. It was like, hey, well, maybe do a network assessment for us so we can find all of our problems. And then they would just turn around, give it to their IT provider and go, okay, go fix this. And bye, Steve. And they would never talk to me again. And so there's always a frame within the conversation that's happening. And we need to be very careful that they are not taking frame and making you into someone who's just going to do tasks for them. So I would lend most of that to framing, and the person who sets the frame of the conversation typically is the one who guides it in the direction that they want it to go in. And so this might be more of a framing as opposed to an upfront contract. Part B, and I'll make this quick, is if you say with an upfront contract, everybody has this part of their brain that says, ooh, that's a salesperson. It's innate with all of us. And upfront contracts are, in my humble opinion, and this is my 2 cents and it's all it's worth, are a thing of the past. And so if I say at the beginning of a sales call, even in the most basic form of an upfront contract, hey, Jeff, like at any point, if this doesn't make sense, hey, just let me know. Like, I don't want to chase you down. You don't want to chase me down. And like, we'll see if it works and we'll figure it out if there's a conversation to have. Like, something along those lines, the traditional upfront contract. I've noticed that in the past 5 or 6 years, those have just gone away, and I stopped using those because it almost flipped a switch in the prospect's mind, like, oh, it's going to be one of these. Okay, here we go. This is a sales guy. I'm probably about to be sold. And so a lot of what sales is adapting to the tactics that are no longer working and bringing them to a more modern approach. With upfront contracts, I would almost abandon them entirely. I don't like to do work for people for free. It puts you in that vendor trap that people are typically trying to push IT vendors into. And so I would abandon them completely because it puts you in a place where there's a no-win. And then ultimately, you're just going to be sitting in a spot where you don't win the business and you've given them resources.
And Nathan, if you're watching this recording back later, if you're here with us, feel free to say hi. But I'm not sure if you're here. I know this was a question from 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you're in a position at your MSP to abandon the upfront contract component or not. You may or may not be in that capacity. But I see your point, Steve. I definitely do. I do think you're right. I think it's framing. I think a lot of it is framing. And I believe your solution to this challenge you're seeing is the mindset that you're bringing to the table at the very front of the sales process. You know, you're not going to necessarily say it this way to the buyer, but in your mind, you need to be like, this is my sandbox. If the buyer steps into my sandbox, they must play by my rules. There are reasons why we do the things we do. There are reasons why we do them the way that we do them. And it is on you, Nathan. Yes, it is on you to articulate those reasons. It is on you to sell the value on them. But you don't go into a Bentley dealership and tell them, sorry, my smartwatch just freaked out at me for no reason. I don't know why or what. It was very distracting. Sorry. Yeah, like you don't go into the office of a surgeon and tell them, you know, what medication you need to be taking before this really big important procedure that you have. Like, you just don't. right? And you need to position yourself as the subject matter expert, the authority. It's like, well, these other guys down the road don't require an upfront contract. It's like, hey, I appreciate that not all surgeons went to medical school, and that's okay. And if you choose to go that way, fine. You know, no harm, no foul, but like there's value in following our process, and you need to show to the prospect why it protects them, why it enables and empowers them, and why it's in their interest to play by your rules in your sandbox. That would be my perspective on your solution here. Is probably more of like Steven said, a framing component to this. It's like, don't let them drive it. It's not their sandbox. They don't get to make the rules. If they could make the rules, they wouldn't need you, right? So stick to your guns would be what I would say. What would you add to that, Steve?
Yeah, real quick. This is Tyler's question, yeah?
No, this is Nathan Carter.
Nathan,
Carter.
excuse me.
From 2 weeks ago. But
okay.
Yeah.
So to Nathan, a really tactical way that you can approach this, and you can apply this to anything, but a lot of times the buyers don't know what to ask or the things that they're requesting. They just do it out of what Jeff said earlier, identity, or they're trying to protect ego, or people don't want to be the unintelligent one or the person that doesn't know something in a room. So they'll say things where you're like, you start answering a question, you're like, why are you even asking that? What really good closers do, and what you can take at least as a tactic, is to say someone says, hey, Steve, like, what kind of certifications do your tech have? And conceptually, you kind of think to yourself, like, well, that's not really a great question. Like, why are you asking that? And so what we do and what we train on is to, one, you always want to say, oh, yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. Probably just means that you want solid technicians in place. Do you mind me asking what specific certifications you're looking for? That's frame control. That is me taking back to the frame to the conversation. Now this person is going to go something like, I don't really know. Do they work with Microsoft? It's like, that's as far as they typically get in that sort of an answer. So you can take that same rhythm, like, oh yeah, that's a really good question. Associate it to something positive, typically. Obviously, we want to make sure that the lens that you are acknowledging is in a positive light. And then ask them the question, because the person that's asking questions is in control of the conversation and has the frame. So you can take that same framework and apply it to moments like that where they go, well, just send me your pricing, which is a common framing trap. Or, hey, can you do this project and then we'll sign later? Really good question. I want to let you know why we just can't make that work. And then move into another question. It's these little moments where you can redirect and ask them, so it puts the focus back on them, because ultimately that's what a conversation's about. And usually the requests, the asks that people are making don't make much sense.
Jeffrey, we are quickly running out of time, but we have 2 more questions on deck, and we'll probably only get to one of them. So why don't you wrap up this conversation for our boy Nathan Carter, our fellow Sith. And then we'll transition into one more question. And then DJ, I see your question here, and it's getting earmarked for priority for April 1st. And I promise we will get to your question, DJ, in 2 weeks. But Samantha, your question is going to be next. Jeffrey, wrap this up, and then we'll tackle Samantha's question, and then be done.
Yeah, a lot of what's already been said is gold. So just rewind and re-listen. So the only thing I'm going to add specifically about the unmentionable training that is being used on upfront contracts is abandon it. Again, hopefully you can modify it. Here's the question I use that worked all the time. Who else needs to feel really good about this decision? It's as far as the upfront contract went for me, because it wasn't about the upfront contract, this whole compliance bullshit of give and take. It was instead, all I need to do is map the way that you're going to buy this. And so I just need to be aware of who else needs to be involved in the buying decision, but I'm also not going to control it, assert it, or like afflict your identity or your ego through a way of the old school tactics like that one. So who else needs to feel really good about this decision? You choose when to drop it in the first time appointment, and you're going to do just fine with where you need to go and how to navigate the rest of the conversation.
Very good insights, everybody. Nathan, hopefully you watch this later and that's meaningful for you. I know it's highly relevant to everybody on this call, because navigating the contract landscape with prospects, there's a lot of minds in that field, and this is one of them. So, all right, Samantha, this one is specifically targeted at you, Steve. So I wanted to make sure this one got brought up. Samantha says, hi, everyone. Steve, what does your ideal client already believe before they even get on a call with you? Also, in your experience, are MSP clients really buying IT support, or are they buying risk reduction and peace of mind? Might be leading the witness a little bit with this one, Samantha, but I very much appreciate the question. Steve, take a crack at it.
Leading question, yes. Well, what do they need? What do they need to believe showing up, or what do they believe? It's really tough because there's different stages to where they're at and their level of awareness. So I can't say blanket across the board what somebody's going to believe at the different stage that they show up. I can say that I would like somebody to show up with a driving decision of necessity, meaning that something has happened. That's when we all are excited and we're like, great, you're willing to share. You have problems. Like, this needs to be fixed. So you're going to share. So I would like everyone to be in that category, but I can't say across the board that that is how people show up. To the second part, leading, yes, it is absolutely IT peace of mind. And for anybody that needs to hear this, because as with Scove, Jeff, myself, sometimes we forget a lot of the basics because we just dive so deep into this world of sales and the behavior of buyers. And so it's a good reminder, but at the end of the day, people don't really give a shit about your MSP or what you sell. What they care about is clarity, direction, and they care about the outcomes that your product or service can provide. And so if you can show them what that's going to look like, whether there's somebody who's visual, auditory, kinesthetic, they need to feel it, whatever it is, you need to show them that path and you need to sell the outcomes. And Jeff, I might have stole this from you, correct me, but you want to sell the destination. You don't want to sell the plane ride. You don't want to sell the 11-hour trip with 3 stops to Hawaii. You want to sell them sitting on the beach with the Mai Tai, having a good time with the sun in their face. And so you need to show them that thing. You need to show them the destination. And typically the better communicator and the person who can show them what IT peace of mind looks like is going to win the sales process. And so people are buying the impact and the outcomes of your service and your product. They're not buying IT services. That's just what we dress it up to be.
Absolutely. Preach.
Yeah.
Jeff, did I steal that, by the way? No, I'm curious.
Yeah, it's all good, but I'll say it this way because it's true and you are right.
Yeah.
And that is the whole point, right? And so the thing is, you don't know if that person wants to go to Maui or if they're a mountains person, right? And so this is where this comes from my world is every buyer, every person in need, every whatever, they come from one of the two sides of the camp. They either have a problem that they do not want, or they want the promise of the future that you're offering that they do not currently have. So either one of those is the driving force that's going to get them to move, and then doing it in a way that Stephen described, where it actually is about the outcome and the destination and the problem that goes away or the future that they get. And it really can be simplified down into that particular formula. And it needs to be universal enough and flexible enough for that buyer to have their own identity that is safe in the dynamic of the conversation. So I want to clarify that too, because when I'm talking ego and identity in the first couple of answers, I'm sort of like shutting it out as in, hey, that shouldn't exist, which isn't the case. You need to understand and respect the identity that they are able to show up in and with, and hold that space so that they feel safe and secure in having a hidden conversation or an uncomfortable one, and getting to the point where you can actually get to what matters. It's what they're going to measure you against.
That's right.
Sometimes if you need to, you can ask certain questions about where they currently are to figure out how are they going to measure me and my outcome. And then you know where to take it that way too.
That's right. I have a multitude of booking links where people can book time with me. And I like to throw in fun, random questions that are optional. Like right now, the one that I ask is, if you were about to give a speech on stage, what would you want your walk-up music to be? And I'm building a Spotify playlist. It's really awesome. But the one I used to do before that was like, if you were an evil supervillain, what would your special ability be? And this was a couple years ago, and I did an analysis of all the demos that people booked with me that year. The most requested special abilities for villains was the ability to read minds and or mind control, but the ability to read minds. And when Samantha, when you're like, what's in the mind of the buyer before they even show up? That's the $1 million question everybody wants to know. It's like, what are you thinking? What
Mhm.
are you thinking before you even talk to me?
Yeah.
And like, and therefore you're like, what's the destination? Like, you don't know. Like, I know. I mean, and I think the MSPs who care, the business, the sellers who care, have been hearing from guys like Steve, Jeffrey, Scofie, and a myriad of other people. Sell on outcomes. Don't sell the line items. You know, it's the business case. It's not the tech stack. You know, and they hear that all the
Mhm.
time. It's like, but like the real, and I think that might actually frustrate MSP sellers a little bit, because they're like, okay, yeah, but like I've got the stuff that I sell, and then
Mhm.
I've got the buyer on the call, and I don't know if it's Maui or if it's the Rockies or if it's the Alps or if it's
Yeah.
you know. And it's like, how do you know? How do you read the minds? Well, the big
Questions.
Yeah.
and hit it on the head. You gotta
Yeah.
you gotta ask them questions. And so have a spirit of curiosity with your prospects.
Mm.
You know, come in and just like realize that you're not there to push a sale. Realize you're not there, like you can't have the commission breath and be like, they smell it on you and like you have to close this deal. Like you need this to survive, even if maybe you do. And I know some of you might need to, you need that sale. You can't go in with that pressure on the engagement. You have to let it go. Just let it and engage it curiously, and
Mhm.
let them share and connect with you. It's like, yeah, man, if I could, I'd take my family on vacation, but I know it's not a thing that's possible for us. And then you get to be the one who comes in and is like, it might be actually.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden they're like, tell me more. And those are the fun ones, right? And that's where, when I say MSAs are signed every day and IT services are sold to new customers every day, those are those aha moments where the buyer's like, actually, yeah, maybe I can go on this trip. So we are out of time. We went over a little bit. Before we wrap up, Steve, I want you to share, before I have a closing announcement, before we wrap up, before we do this, I want you to share with people who should reach out to you, Steve, when should they reach out to you, and how should they reach out to you?
Absolutely. So, who should reach out to me? Really, anybody who's in the MSP space from a sales perspective, and you want to increase your conversion, you want to close more deals, and you're sick of indecision and we went with the guy down the street emails that are sent your way. Anybody who's in the MSP sales space, reach out to me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me at Nexus Sales Group, GRP, not spelled out group, nexussalesgroup.com. Or you could shoot me an email at steve@nexussalesgroup, same domain.com. If you guys send me an email about resources, question books, anything like that, I've got more resources than I know what to do with, and I'm happy to
Mhm.
share them. But those are the places you can find me, and I look forward to hearing from you guys.
We
And
are
girls.
so thrilled that you joined us today, Stephen, on episode 6 of season 2 of the MSP Water Cooler. Just a few closing comments for our viewers before we hop off. 2 weeks from now, April 1st, and no, it will not be an April Fool's thing. This is actually happening. We have a special guest, Brad Powell, co-founder of Threat Captain and beloved leader in the MSP channel, is gracing us with his presence and his deep knowledge and insights around sales enablement in the space. So I highly recommend that you mark your calendars. We will post more about it in a week or two. And so, but if you want to mark your calendar now, MSP Water Cooler is every other Wednesday. And so April 1st is the next one. We have a series of guests coming down the line in the future as well that we're very excited to announce. And so if you got any value out of this, please let us know in the comments and make a note to be here on the next one. And the final announcement is, if you got value out of this and you're in striking distance of Greenville, South Carolina, next Thursday is the 24-month anniversary of Upstate Channel Collab. And that's a unique one because we're having a party because it's 2 years old, 24 months old, and we have some announcements coming, but we're doing a panel on MSP sales enablement. We have a couple business leaders who run MSPs who will be on stage. Brad will be on stage as well. I'll be emceeing the discussion. It's going to be some fun. There'll be some food. You can get a drink at Fireforge Brewery and network with some peers in the industry. So if you can make it, definitely make an effort to be there. We are out of time, folks. We went long. Thank you for everybody who hung out with us today. Jeffrey, always great to see you. We're going to wrap up, and we'll see you on the next episode of the MSP Water Cooler.